While we typically like to cover the best games on this channel, there is no doubt that there have been some that haven't been so great. And in this video, we're going over the 10 absolutely worst games of 2017 so far. Some of these games have their redeeming qualities, but overall, they're just not worth it. With that being said, let's get right into this. Number 10, Mass Effect Andromeda. When talking about colossal disappointments, it doesn't get much worse than Mass Effect Andromeda. BioWare had done such a great job with the original trilogy of games. Sure, the third game's conclusion wasn't the best, but everything else from the games were so well done that we were expecting more of that same quality from Andromeda. What we got was a game far below Mass Effect standards, below the standards to be qualified as a good RPG even. It released as a buggy and unfinished product, which for something of the caliber of Mass Effect is unacceptable, so the story was bland, and it had a lot of recycled elements. Hopefully Mass Effect redeems itself at some point, because Andromeda was a bad game. Number 9, Conan Exiles. Now, while Conan Exiles is in early access, it's been there for quite a while, and there's a certain quality standard that should be met even with early access titles. It's pricey at $30 with very little content. Again, it's early access, but it's been that way for 8 months. You'd think it would be a more expansive experience at this point. Technically, it's a mess too. It crashes and is quite buggy. At least visually, it looks pretty good, but everything else needs a lot of work. Number 8, Moto Racer 4. Moto Racer 4, from a fundamental standpoint, actually isn't a terrible game. Mechanically, it works, and that's a lot better than some of the games on this list, so we'll give it that. However, there just isn't much to it. Recycled tracks, a meaningless career mode, and a less than stellar VR component. After an hour with the game, it becomes unbearably generic. Number 7, Double Dragon 4. Double Dragon 4 is a perfect example of nostalgia going only so far. It's an iconic franchise, however, Double Dragon 4 retains the mechanics of yesteryear without changing anything up. A game stuck decades ago without much refinement can only do so much, especially in a genre that has seen quite an evolution. I would recommend to just stick to the Double Dragon games of old and don't give Double Dragon 4 another look.
But what were they after? Billy and Jimmy headed to Japan in search of someone called Okada, a name they picked up from the Renegades. The battle was only just beginning. The enemies are a familiar group who Billy and Jimmy have defeated again and again.
Number 6, Randall. Randall is set in a dystopian world that doesn't seem too far from a future of our own. On paper, looking at the game, it's actually very charming, however the controls are pretty clunky and unresponsive. The story is blasé, pretty much non-existent. There is potential here in Randall, and with it being the developer's first game, maybe they can put out something better on a second attempt. Nonetheless, Randall is a pretty bad game.
They are programmed to stop you. But you have something that can't be stopped. That's your mind. Use it to defeat your enemies. Think to find your way out. You gotta take the system down. You're the only hope.
Number 5, Dying Reborn. Dying Reborn is a dark horror-themed puzzle game for VR. Horror games in VR is something that many gamers want, but Dying Reborn definitely isn't a good one. It's that B-movie tier of horror. It's very short, the storytelling is pretty bad, and the gameplay isn't anything special. In nearly every aspect, Dying Reborn is far from being even mediocre. There are much better horror experiences out there. Number 4, Troll and I. Troll and I was a game with a lot of potential. It centers around a young boy who forms a bond with a giant troll, and together they go on an adventure set in a post-World War II Scandinavia. If I told you that without the notion of this being one of the worst games of the year, you'd probably be somewhat interested in it. However, this is one of the worst games of the year. Bad level design and just a lack of creativity outside of the setting stops it from being anything good or even average. Not to mention the weak storytelling and gameplay don't help at all. Troll and I is one to avoid. Number 3, VROOM in the Night Sky. The Nintendo Switch has been a pretty solid platform, but every platform has their horrible games, and it doesn't get much worse than VROOM in the Night Sky. Horrible and dodgy controls, the story is pretty much non-existent because of the horrific translation. It's such a rushed game, and one would have to question how it even passed quality assurance testing. Just don't play it. The Switch has far better options. Number 2, Mighty Morphin Rangers Mega Battle. A great Power Rangers game is something we've wanted for a long time. Mighty Morphin Rangers Mega Battle was touted as a creative and modern reimagining of the classic multiplayer beat-em-up genre. It was reimagined into far less than mediocrity, with the most basic game design that can't even really capture the essence of the license. Whether you're a fan or not, this is not worth your time at all.
Magic Wand, make my monster grow!
Power Rangers! No one can ever take them down.
But there's a far greater evil that awaits our heroes from the shadows.
And finally, number 1, Life of Black Tiger. Life of Black Tiger is without a doubt the biggest atrocity available on the PlayStation 4. It's an Android port, and for some odd reason, Sony was actually promoting garbage like this for a little bit. But we'll forgive you, but we won't forgive this game. Visually, as you can see, it's absolutely pitiful. The animations are terrible, even for PS2 standards. Mechanically, it's a mess, the fundamentals are a mess, and the overall design is a mess. This is a game that has gained a certain novelty for how bad it is, but please, do not play it, do not pay for it, do not reward the developers for a game like this. So that wraps up the 10 absolutely worst games of 2017 so far. What do you think? Is there a game that you hated more than any of these on the list? Let us know in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.